Morning everyone. I would like to start my presentation by asking a few questions. The first would be, why does infrastructure have to be built around vehicle routes? What if highways were built for pedestrians instead? What if importance is placed on pedestrians? And that leads into my project Sky Network. An elevated structure for pedestrians and wildlife. It started with looking into sports and finding out that people actually, on average, exercise lesser than they should in Oxford. And the project for my previous semester was about how do I solve this problem. So how I went about doing it is, because currently the facilities were functioning in isolation, and by connecting them, they can function together. And I brought that idea further with this project by connecting all the sports facilities in Oxford, and this in return will improve all of their functionality. And then I brought forward the project, since I'm connecting all these points, why not I also connect these nature areas in Oxford, creating this sort of wildlife corridor. And by creating this wildlife corridor, similarly to the sports network, it helps to create a bigger, better joined up network. The elevated structure will act as a safe haven for wildlife during flood, as some of the nature areas are in the floodplain. I then wanted to increase the functionality of the Sky network by connecting it to facilities. This shows the connection of the entire Sky network, and I decided to focus on this area in the middle because that has the most connections. That area is where Ifley Road, the Kidneys, and Ifley Meadows are. How I went about designing that area was, I mapped out the key points and the floodplain, and then I started mapping out the shortest route between them, and then I started channeling the route in a way that it reduces the impact of the space underneath, and then on I started assigning functions to them. The network is actually separated into three parts: the access, the part which is the elevated structure, and the parts then intersect, and the intersection point becomes a node. This is how the developed network looks like. The parts, node, and access I mentioned earlier, some of them are given functions, and the functions are actually determined by the programs around it. For the AR Hub node, the programs that drive its functions are the Ifley Sports Center and the other sports centers nearby, and the playground below it. So these recreation activities is what drives the function of AR Hub, and the AR Hub functions as well like a virtual exercise area. The function of the elevated playground is also driven by the same factors. As the sports centers are more adult oriented, this will bring in a more younger audience into the picture. There's actually three types of part: standard, hard, and flat. Two of them have gradient to it, and the gradient is to help them exercise more. The floor deck is made up of aluminium mesh. This is so that light can travel through it. The primary materials used are mainly stainless steel, because from my research it showed that stainless steel is what's most durable for outdoor use and has the strength required to achieve what my design intends. Aluminium was chosen as a secondary material as it's cheaper and more cost efficient, but doesn't have the level of strength as stainless steel. The parts can be mounted in different heights, and the height differences will create more gradient. And then I thought, why not I include augmented reality as well? The reason for doing so is, I created this part to make precise, but how do I keep bringing them back? I mapped out the system, and the main parts of it are virtual representation of people, scene replacement, and augmentation games. This is a demonstration of the augmentation, and currently it uses a bulky headset, but in the future it will become much more smaller, and we can integrate that easily into our contact lenses and our glasses. The problem with augmentation nowadays is it's limited to just the virtual world. So I thought maybe I can also make the augmentation create changes in the physical world as well. So by having this moving part that responds to the augmentation, it helps to bridge the gap further. The paths have hedges and vines to drive the goal of wildlife corridor just now. This is how it will look in augmentation, with a virtual representation of yourself and a scene replacement. This is how the function part will look like. This is the elevated playground, and as you can see how these different types of activities on the ground and on the path actually complement each other. The network also cuts through people's back gardens, and when cutting it creates these semi-public spaces. Moving on to the node. So this is the AR hub. The function of the hub is to act as a center for the augmented activities on the network. The hub can be extended through augmentation, and the augmentation is actually part of a game in real time. The design is based around William H. White's The Social of Small Urban Spaces, and what that says is basically people tend to avoid center areas. So in this case, I changed the center area into the main circulation area, and the main circulation area also acts as a ramp for shelter for wildlife. The shapes are slightly distorted to give it a futuristic aesthetic, and this is based on a form study I did. The hub is actually attached to the IFLI Sports Center so that they can share their facilities, and the part that's extended from the IFLI Sports Center acts as an indoor AR court. One of the main areas of the hub is the AR stage. The AR stage is a place whereby the floors can actually move, and this is so that normal activities such as paintball fight, water gun fight can occur in this stage, and in augmentation it will look something different and something more immersive. And by having these moving floors that can be controlled through augmentation, it will create a more engaging experience, and in return will help people exercise more through this. The indoor AR hub is a smaller version of the AR stage, and this is meant to be for more private matches between groups of friends and family. The AR studio is a place whereby people can create and design their own matches, and there's like a installation of the floor, and you can preview the match you have created in that space. The hub also functions as a place for nature, connecting to the intent of the wildlife corridor just now. The middle area, which is the ramp, houses these planter boxes where hedges are grown, and that is meant for wildlife to take over and make it their home. The mesh I mentioned earlier also allows plants and hedges to grow on it, and when it grows there will be these pockets, and these pockets can also be a place for wildlife to be in. That concludes my presentation for today. Thank you very much for listening.